Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And I thought the session, When We Build It, Will They Come, reminded me of that, of course, the 1989 film, Field of Dreams, where Ray Kinsella, played by Kevin Costner, heard someone whisper in his ear, "Build it and they will come." And he tore down a cornfield, built a baseball diamond, and it took more than a year before the first player showed up, and that was shoeless Joe Jackson of the broad array of legendary players. Here, in this context, it was 100 years ago that the first electric car came about, not just 1 year. And then as now, the acceptance by consumers really depended on three key factors: the advances in technology, the supporting infrastructure, and the comparative costs. Then it lost on all three. Now, whether it will lose the 21st century as it did in the start of the 20th century is really the question that I addressed in my research. I surveyed a random sample of nearly 3,000 consumers and tried to determine their interest in plugins. Now, I can tell you there's widespread interest in plugins, as well as widespread resistance to the expected cost of plugins. We used a variety of questions, and we tested three different additional premiums for the vehicles. So we asked them about a given fuel savings and how much extra they would pay for it. At $10,000, the market virtually disappears. 56% of all households said they wouldn't even consider it. At $2,500, we had more than a third of all households who said they were very eager to purchase. Now, this difference between $10,000 and $2,500, that's $7,500, is, of course, what the government plans on as a tax credit. Now, unfortunately, the tax credit applies to when you file your taxes. It's not a reduction in price, and more importantly, a reduction in the amount you have to finance. And when we look closely at consumer attitudes, from an economist's point of view, they are discounting the future savings in fuel at a much too high a rate. If they discounted the future savings at just 3% in real terms, we would see many more consumers buy these vehicles. And this was true even though they expected gas prices to continue to rise. But what were I divided the variables up into three groups. The cars they own now and how they use them, characteristics of the household itself, the social and demographic characteristics, and their attitudes towards the environment. What was the most powerful predictor of these first buyers of plugins? Attitudes towards the environment. Second was their household characteristics, and third was the characteristics of their vehicles. But nonetheless, the first buyers will have vehicles that have fairly high fuel efficiency. They'll be highly educated, they'll have high incomes, they'll own their own homes with access to plugs, and they'll be just delighted not to have to visit gas stations anymore. These first adopters, it's very commonplace finding that the utility that consumers derive from vehicles signal position signal. And the strongest appeal of plugins commitment to the environment. And this is going to be very important for the first-time purchasers of plugins. Now, I think the initial, but what makes a successful vehicle is if it has legs, whether it can continue to move forward. And this will depend on whether the new technology actually provides in use a reliable form of transportation, whether the infrastructure changes will make it more convenient to use, how fast will mass production lower the cost of the vehicle, and how will the future price of gasoline change relative to electricity and other forms of energy, and how will competing vehicles face off the and rather than the outcome in the 1900s, where it was like Betamax versus VHS, now I expect that we'll see a significant niche for electric cars and more diverse vehicle stock. But how fast and how big a niche we cannot know for certain. We can say with a great deal of certainty that consumers are ready to experiment with alternate technologies in transportation. And that's probably the best first step that any new innovation could ask for. Thank you.